Paul Finebaum not sure that Oklahoma's ready for 2024.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply over at Game Time. Thank you, and shout out to all of the everydayers out there that are tuning in, subscribing to Locked On Sooners, and making it their first listen every single day. I'm John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. He's Jay Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at Unfair Sports. And Paul Finebaum leads off the show as he had some comments with one Matt Berry talking about Oklahoma's future. He was asked, do you think Oklahoma is going to be a problem for SEC programs in 2024? And he said, no, I don't think they are going to be this year, but they are certainly going to be in the future. Jay, what is your reaction to what Paul Finebaum had to say?
Well, the good thing is Paul Finebaum has been pretty positive about Oklahoma coming to the SEC, right? He made his visit here, got to see the campus, see all the awards, was a little bit shocked at just really all the rich tradition here, being that he's an SEC guy, doesn't really have a reason to come around or pay too much attention to Oklahoma. But, the comments aren't outlandish, right? Like before when they were asking about programs that were up and coming, he said Oklahoma is definitely one that's going to be an up and coming problem over the years. Now, with all the concerns here at Oklahoma, what questions more than anything that we have on the team with the offensive line and the quarterback, it makes sense for them to say, well, this year, probably not. Once we see them, we can expect to see them becoming a problem long term. And so I don't think it's a ridiculous notion that he states that, no, he didn't think that 2024 is going to be the year, but he did acknowledge that the future, possibly 25, 26, 27, Oklahoma is going to be a big problem in the SEC.
Yeah, it's reasonable if you have questions, if you have concerns about Oklahoma going into 2024. It's understandable that you might expect them to have a bit of an acclimation year this season, especially given what the schedule is. At the same time, I'm not really willing to lay back. I believe Oklahoma is going to go into the SEC, and they're going to be a problem for SEC schools. Are there challenges on the schedule? 100%. Without a doubt, there's going to be a number of top 15 teams on their schedule this year, but you're going into the season with one of the more experienced defenses in the country, a developing defense, not one that just has a lot of experience, as Thanos and Loki are talking in Avengers Infinity War, and Loki's saying, hey, I've got experience on Earth. And Thanos is saying, hey, if you consider failure experience, and Loki's like, I consider experience. Well, all that to say, there's experience and then there's productive experience. And we've seen the development out of this defense going from ranking 99th in scoring defense in 2022 to 49th in scoring defense in 2023, improving by a touchdown basically year over year. That's an impressive turnaround for that defense. They got better in short yardage situations. They got better, more efficient on third down. The two key areas that this team was not good at in 2022, they improved. And so you look at some of the areas in which they need to continue to improve. Well, that's in giving up big plays, and that's in securing a more consistent pass rush. And I don't have any doubt that this team is going to continue to improve in those areas. And that's what gives me optimism about where they're heading. Now, the schedule is tough. You've got road games in some difficult environments, but some of these teams like Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, they got to come to you too. And you're going to provide a difficult environment for those teams to play in as well.
Yeah, because the good thing for Oklahoma going into the SEC is that, if you think about the proficient offenses out there, right? Playing Ole Miss, they were 16th in the country, averaging about 35 a game. Texas was about 35.8. Ole Miss about 35.1. So they were very close in scoring right there, right? Georgia, we don't see them, but they're in the 40s per game. They were just behind us at 40.1, and we're 41.7 last season. If we go out there and score like we were before, there's not very many of them in the conference. I mean, Alabama's at 34, right? For the most part, you can expect most of the teams be in the 30s range. And if Oklahoma's defense is what we are anticipating it to be, yeah, we're going to do that. So it's one of those things you have to just look closely, right? Really dig into the numbers and understand who we are and what we're playing against, right? Go look and see what the numbers were that these other teams were putting up. They weren't putting up as many points as you think, right? That's not the SEC way. The big SEC way is really playing stout defense. And because we'll walk in with that, and I think that's what Finebaum is looking at. Oklahoma is expected to play some really stout defense coming in, especially being the third year of Brent Venables. I know we beat that dead horse over and over, but that's the thing we're trying to remind you. As long as Oklahoma continuously grows on the defensive side of the ball with the veterans, even Venables said it himself. Just because you have this experience doesn't mean that you're going to actually, execute on it. But that experience helps you with execution, right? It's like a double-edged sword in some capacities, right? Or maybe an oxymoron, one of the two. The big thing is that having the experience while also, growing from that, you can leverage that experience to be able to execute. The question is, what does the execution look like? And I think that we can do it. I think that 24 may not be the year that we make the biggest noise, but I bet you people will start to open their eyes to what Oklahoma's capable of in 2024.
Yeah, a lot of people have been pointing to 2025 as the year that Oklahoma goes and legitimately contends. But I sit here and I look at Danny Stutzman coming back and Billy Bowman coming back and Woody and Dejon Terry. And I'm thinking, no, you've got to take advantage of these experienced defensive veterans, all-American type players. You got to take advantage of it this year. You cannot sit there and afford an acclimation year. None of those guys are going to be sitting there saying, no, this isn't our year. No, they're going into the season fully expecting to contend. And you talked about the offensive side of the ball, and it had me thinking about the defense. Okay, what defense on Oklahoma's schedule absolutely fears you? Or are you afraid of?
Ooh.
Alabama, maybe? Because you look at LSU's, they've got a transition. They bring in Blake Baker from Missouri, but that defense was cheeks last year. It was not good. Ole Miss, not good on defense. Now added a Walter Nolan, added a Joey Ivy, like big time defensive line prospects, but will it mesh together to allow them to go be an elite defense this year, a good defense this year? We'll see. Tennessee, it's kind of underrated. They've got a really great pass rusher in James Pierce. But again, that's a defense that gave up a lot of points last year too. So you look at what Oklahoma's offense is going to be going up against. And aside from Alabama, I don't really see a defense out there that you're like 100%. That is going to be a really, really tough defense. It's a lot of defenses that are like, it should be better, but will it be better? And so I'm not going to lay back on my optimism for Oklahoma in 2024. One, because Oklahoma's defense is going to be good, and it could be one of the better ones in the SEC this year. It's Georgia, and then I think it's a lot of maybe good teams.
No, you're fair with that. And I feel the same way. I think Alabama's still going to be able to be very competitive, as Kellen DeBoer has proven that he's really good with using other people's players. And he has way more talent and resources at Bama than he's ever had at Washington. But you're spot on. Like with LSU, we talk about them. Like, the Baker pickup was fantastic for what Brian Kelly's trying to do. He actually did the opposite of what like a Les Miles did, or even Ed Orgeron. He recognized where there was a hole and said, you know what? I'm going to fill it with some talent. I'm going to fill it with a talented coach that can go get talent. Getting Bo Davis from Texas. That was a big question at SEC Media Days. They were asking, So, how does it feel to, take players from other schools or whatnot? Or he asked Texas, how did they feel about losing Bo Davis, right? Then they went and got Corey Redmond as a secondary coach. So this season, I don't expect LSU's defense to really be back to what we're used to them being. But next year, I could totally see them figuring it out and going from there, because all new staff, they still got to work together. They still got to mesh, right? And that's even the question that we hear about Oklahoma all the time. It's, you got 2 new coordinators. What's that going to look like? Based upon all the reviews we know, Zach Alley isn't just really a new one, right? He worked for Brent Venables for 8 years at Clemson. He's like a clone of him. And then Seth Luttrell's been an offensive coordinator for years, and he worked with Bill Beatonbow when they were both at Arizona. So the good thing is there's chemistry and continuity already there because they've seen and been together. So for Oklahoma, the big thing is execution. We'll always repeat that word, execution. As long as we do that, yeah, it's going to be a good year. But I don't think this. I mean, I've gone through some of these teams and some of their points and stuff, like looking at, like, Tennessee gave up 20 points a game last year, right? We were at 23.5, so we're not too far. We were in middle of the road and giving up points in the SEC, probably ranked around 7th, right? Because Auburn was at 25.8. Ole Miss was at 22. We're right there at 23. So we're in the mix in scoring defense on there. And offensively, we're the third highest school in the SEC, with LSU being 45. And then you had Georgia at 41. We're right there at 40 points per game. So no, we're going to be able to continuously do the offense and defense we've done in years past. The bigger thing is that what can we do to stop them from scoring, in which, to be honest, only about 7 of the schools were scoring over 30 points a game. The rest were 29 and down, and I expect that to continue next season.
Yeah, if Oklahoma's holding teams to 20, 24 points per game, I feel really, really good about their chances to win a lot of football games in the SEC. Where does the Oklahoman have Oklahoma sitting in their SEC power rankings? Let's discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. If you're looking for last-minute tickets and the best deals, you got to go check out the Game Time app. It is the best place, and it is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. If you're trying to go check out the Texas Rangers this weekend or the St. Louis Cardinals, Kansas City Royals, you got to get in on the Game Time app with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Pick out specific games. Hey, right now, one of my favorite things, like, I love looking at the comedy shows. I want to go see a comedy show. Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy, he's going to be at Riverwind Casino this weekend. You can go check it out. Get the best deals over at Game Time. Again, go use promo code LOCKEDONCollege after you download the Game Time app, wherever you get your apps. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. Again, get the last-minute tickets, the lowest prices guaranteed over at Game Time using code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Joe Masato over at the Oklahoman had his power rankings come out, and really it was a question of where does Oklahoma fit in 2024 preseason SEC power rankings. And I mean, we can go down the list real quick until we get to Oklahoma. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ole Miss. Number 3, Texas. Big eye roll. You didn't see it on the podcast side. Number 4, Alabama. Number 5, LSU. Number 6, Missouri. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 8, Oklahoma. Texas A&M comes in at 9 and Florida at 10. So, Jay, I'll let you start here. What's your reaction to where Oklahoma ranks in these preseason power rankings?
So I think Joe is subscribing to the not 2024 for Oklahoma, but 2025 and beyond, we will. And more so, he's got the questions of he wants Oklahoma to prove themselves, right? So I filled out my bracket. I mean, my power rankings as well, because everybody that went to SEC Media Days got a chance to be able to fill it out. Those that were credentialed got emailed a ballot to fill it out. And this is what I filled mine out for. You're going to be a little bit surprised. But first off, I had Georgia, Alabama, my number 3 team, Oklahoma, Texas, Ole Miss at 5, LSU 6, Missouri number 7, Tennessee 8, Florida at number 9, Texas A&M 10, and then below that, you got Auburn, Kentucky, Arkansas, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and then Mississippi State. And the reason why I put mine there, and which I understand why he put his at 8th, as he noted, is because of those coordinators coming in. And he felt like if Dylan Gabriel was there, Oklahoma would be top 5. Totally get that. It's mainly because he's been there. He's this dude that we've seen for years. Totally understand that. But me personally, this guy, no. I see that Oklahoma has a really good chance of really showing out this coming season. And I think Jackson Arnold's going to be the real deal. So I have no reason to really doubt what they're going to be preparing him for. especially because I know that he is being forged in fire in practice every day.
Well, I was a little bit surprised that you were higher on Oklahoma than I was. I had him fourth in my preseason SEC ballot. So, right about the same. And for really the reason is because I'm high on Jackson Arnold. I'm a believer. And yes, Oklahoma Sooners podcast, Oklahoma Sooners writer, definitely going to look a little bit more favorably upon Oklahoma. At the same time, the talent is real. Yeah. He's got the arm. He's got the intangibles. He's got the mobility. All of it is there for him to be really, really successful. And the coaching staff believes in him. You don't just turn away an experienced veteran that just had a great season like Dillon Gabriel unless you're 100% confident that Jackson Arnold can be better than what Dillon Gabriel was last year. And I think that's the thing that we're sleeping on a little bit is that, okay, the ceiling for Jackson Arnold is much higher than what it was for Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel was great. He was fantastic for Oklahoma, but he had limitations. Jackson Arnold doesn't have those limitations. The only limitation Jackson Arnold has right now is experience, but he's going to get that and some this year. And after those first 3 games of the year, he's going to have more than enough experience to put Oklahoma in a favorable spot to win a lot of games this season in the SEC. Any surprise about, some of the teams that might have come in ahead of Oklahoma, according to Masato?
Yeah. To be honest, we expected Texas up there, but Missouri as the number 2 team really, Ole Miss, that really surprised me. I wouldn't expect anybody to throw Ole Miss up that high. And Ole Miss comes in with the highest rated, they're the top transfer school, right? They don't get recruiting classes that high. They go out and go after the top players in the transfer portal and just pay them that way, right? They like to pay the retail prices. They don't like paying wholesale prices. And not all the time, if you're going there going for those retail prices, are you really getting the best deal or even the best quality product? You're just getting what sounds like it's good on the shelf, when in all actuality, if you find out at wholesale, sometimes you can get a better deal on an even better product. It doesn't seem like Ole Miss is recognizing that. They're going to play the retail game. And I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I want to see if it can come to fruition. It's no different than what's being done by Coach Prime over there at Colorado. They're playing the retail game right now just to see if they can build themselves enough equity to where they can actually start investing heavily into the wholesale side. Now, for Lane Kiffin, the biggest struggle for them is, recruiting has never been the easiest at that school. So it kind of makes sense to go the alternate route now that you can do that. But eventually, you're going to have to get your equity up so that you can start buying more stuff in bulk and getting those really good players like that. So I think that one was the biggest shock to me when I looked at the list. And also, there's one school, though. Florida at 10 makes sense because I think Florida's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't know why. It just feels like it. Kentucky as well, right? Since Mark Stoops been there, he's had like 3 years that he's had 10-win seasons. And the way their schedule is set up and how favorable it is, every 3 years, he's basically put out a 10-win season. It was like 3 years ago, he had a 10-win season. And before that, it was 3 years before that, he went 10-3. Right now, the last 2 seasons were 7-6 and 7-6. What's going to be this 3rd year? Sure enough, it looks like he could get back on the trend of another 10-win season. He's got a starting quarterback now in Brock Vandagriff, who we have questions about, but there's a chance that he could shock us all, right? So Brock Vandagriff, the linebacker room is absurd. J.J. Weaver's got multiple extra fingers. So you've got an advantage right there on top of everything else. I think Kentucky's going to be one that's going to shock everybody.
Yeah, I hear you on Florida. I think they're going to be a team that is probably better than what their record indicates this year. That schedule, we talk about Oklahoma's schedule being tough. Florida's schedule is absolutely brutal. The non-conference alone is really, really tough. But then you look at their conference schedule and it's just ridiculous. Like I was listening to, I think it was Locked On SEC or Locked On College Football, one of them. And they were talking about Billy Napier and just making a bowl game might be enough for him to get himself off the hot seat a little bit. So, yeah, I think you could argue Mizzou maybe being a little bit high there. But again, they're coming off an 11-win season, which was Eli Drinkwitz's first in Columbia, his first season over 6 wins. We'll see if he can sustain that. And I have Alabama still at number 2. To me, Alabama's got to prove they're not Alabama for me to knock Alabama back a little bit. I had Georgia 1, Alabama 2. I think I had Ole Miss 3, Oklahoma 4. And then I want to say I had Texas down at 6. I need to see that Texas can withstand losing 11 players to the NFL draft.
No, that's fair.
Steve Sarkisian hasn't shown me sustained development yet. And if they can do that and they can go have a successful season, I'll have a little bit more respect for what they can do next year. I'm just a bigger believer in Brent Venables and the defensive staff there. That's why I have them ranked ahead of the Texas Longhorns. But we get to find out here in 6 weeks' time when the 2024 college football season kicks off, and we'll all be glad for it. I know you as the Locked On Sooners listener will be glad to start finally talking about fall camp, which kicks off in just a couple weeks, or I think just next week, actually. Yeah. And then we get football season with Temple August 30th. So we're almost there, guys. It's going to be fun. So make sure you tuned in with Locked On Sooners here every single day. Who's coming to town? Peyton Manning's coming to town. Let's discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Peyton Manning joining the Pat McAfee show. I want to say McAfee, but it's McAfee. My apologies, Pat. Mentioned that he's going to be going to Norman for Tennessee OU. And dude, that's going to be fun. That's going to be super fun. I love Peyton Manning. I know maybe he's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think he and Eli do a fantastic job on the Manning cast on Monday Night Football. It's created a very entertaining element to watching Monday Night Football every single season. So I love that. And I'm a fan of the commercials. Just the dopey, goofy, silly commercials. I even remember back to the ESPN ones where him and Manning and Eli and Archie are taking the tour through ESPN headquarters and they're picking on each other. Like, I love that commercial. So Peyton Manning coming to Norman, whatever the pregame situation looks like, whether it's College Game Days coming to town or you just get the Pat McAfee show or whatever it is, it's going to be so much fun to have him in Norman, probably get some Bob Stoops and Peyton Manning interaction. I think that could be a lot of fun too. So it's going to be great. And he had some things to say about Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference and was just really kind of excited about the renewed rivalries, mostly focusing on Texas, but talking about, and here's what Peyton Manning had to say. I think there's going to be some immediate rivalries created with Texas and Alabama, Oklahoma and Tennessee. It's not going to take long to create these rivalries. Obviously, Texas A&M, Texas, bringing that back is awesome. Bringing Texas, Arkansas back, I think that's awesome. Both those teams are going to fit right into the conference and make an incredibly difficult conference even harder.
I love the fact that he pointed out that the conference is now going to be harder because Oklahoma and Texas is in there. He didn't say that the conference, they're going to have, just some guys, it's going to be in the middle of the road and, right, potentially be okay. No. He pointed out specifically that it's going to be harder, which is exactly what we're trying to preach to all of you all for the last few weeks. Both teams coming in here, they're going to create a challenge. The biggest challenge is recruiting. Go look at those recruiting numbers. Oklahoma and Texas are both always in the top 10, if not top 5 of recruiting. And so they're taking away a lot of players that some of these other schools actually want. Now, granted, the question is, how do you develop them and how you execute with them? You hear me say execute a lot. That's the key word here. But no, I love the fact that he's going to make the trip to the Tennessee game. I figure a lot of the big Tennessee name people will be in town again for that game, especially because it is the first SEC game for Oklahoma, which is going to be exciting to see. And then you'll see Nico Iamaleava be able to come out there and potentially have a big shootout with Jackson Arnold because they were both in the same class, both 5-star plus guys. And, considered the two with the highest upside, probably that entire class, right? So, yeah, it's going to be a fun time. And, of course, Peyton's going to enjoy himself. Hopefully he's on one of the broadcasts or he pops up into one of the broadcast rooms and, be able to participate in some of it. And if things go right, I mean, shoot, there's a good chance we could have some College Game Day in town for that one, right?
Yeah,
it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, breaking Oklahoma into the SEC in Norman, I mean, it seems like a great opportunity to have College Game Day. We'll see what they reserve that for because, again, you have OU Texas, you've got OU going to Auburn, you've got OU Alabama, you've got OU LSU. I mean, there's so many potential opportunities to feature Oklahoma in a College Game Day, but they're going to spread the wealth a little bit on that front. So it wouldn't surprise me to see something, whether it's SEC Now or different SEC network shows come into Norman for that week. Paul Finebaum, who knows what exactly will happen, but that they're going to build that up, and it's going to be a celebratory week leading up to it.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, that's probably one of the bigger games for the daytime. That's the one that you would want to do game day on. That's the game that you would want to have them for, because that game should be ranked. And besides LSU, UCLA, I think that's the biggest game of that week, right? I mean, you've got a couple of other matchups that could be considered, like Clemson and North Carolina State or something. Maybe a BYU Kansas State, but I don't think BYU will be ranked at that point. The way that schedule is looking, there's a very good chance, if this isn't a night game, let's, cross fingers and toes, but there's a good chance that this is the game that College Game Day shows up for that week, because there's nobody else on the schedule that's going to be ranked except for USC Michigan, in which that's most likely big noon Saturday. So there's a good chance that College Game Day pulls up and shows up for the Tennessee and Oklahoma game if both go into that game undefeated.
Yeah, so I actually picked that game when I was going week by week through the 2024 college football season and picking an SEC game to watch each week. I tried to stay away from Oklahoma games because obviously Oklahoma fans are going to be watching every Oklahoma game. But when I looked at week 4, this was the one that jumped out more than any of them. Mm-hmm. Obviously UCLA, LSU is going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a great SEC non-conference game. But as far as like the best SEC game on the schedule, week 4, it's Oklahoma, Tennessee.
Yep.
There's no better matchup. Obviously the pomp and circumstance of Oklahoma having their first SEC game, the Volunteers coming to town, I talked on a Tennessee radio show this past week about how you've got a lot of storylines to follow and to watch, and a lot of talent, with that Tennessee Volunteers team, the return of Josh Heupel. There are going to be so many stories and so many video packages and interviews that are done. Like, it just makes sense to have College Game Day in town for that one. Any final thoughts on anything that we discussed here today, Jay?
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that the storylines that Oklahoma has in play are huge, right? From, Josh Heupel making his valiant return back home to the school that he first got his first job. He won a national championship and all of that. So he's coming back for the first time since technically being fired back in 2014, right? You've got that story. You got Shane Beamer making his return to Oklahoma, to Norman for the first time, right? Since he left from the Riley team and went over there to South Carolina. You got the OU Texas rivalry, right? That's going to be a big one. You're going to have Alabama coming to town for the first time since the early 2000s, and Oklahoma winning that series 2-0. There are so many good storylines in all of these games coming up that Oklahoma's got nice amount of advantage to wanting to getting people to want to talk about them. Let's put it that way. So I'm keeping my eye on this schedule. I think that week 4 will get game day. Week 5 is definitely going to be Georgia, Alabama. It's no question about it what game day is going to be for that week. I don't care what their record is. They're going to be there for that game because that's the one they want to see. And no, it's going to be cool to see a lot of the people coming in, the SEC's royalty coming into town to visit during our games. I'm pretty stoked to see it.
Yeah, this whole season is just going to be one of those where if Oklahoma has any kind of success, it's going to just send that recruiting skyrocketing.
Oh my God.
Everybody's just kind of sitting there waiting with bated breath a little bit, just waiting. They wanted to see the 10-3 season. That helped them secure that 2024 class. But if they go into the SEC and they have another 10-win season, I think everybody's going to be ready to say, okay, this Sooners team, this Brent Venables coaching staff, they're heading in the right trajectory. I want to be on that team. I want to help them go win a national title. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Sooners Insider Program by texting SEC 2024 to 405-817-6711. You can get 25% off your first month by texting SEC 2024 2-405-817-6711, or you can follow the link in the episode notes as well. Also, I'm going to share that article I wrote for Sooners Wire in the episode notes. One SEC game to watch each week of the 2024 college football season. Go follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports. Also, go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, on YouTube as well. Follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, wherever you follow your socials, we're there. Go check it out. Again, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and go check out the Locked On SEC podcast with Chris Gordy as well. Doing great work covering everything, every angle from the SEC Media Days. Had a lot of great interviews this week on the show. I enjoyed listening to that myself, catching up, getting to know some of these players that Oklahoma is going to be facing this season as well. But he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We're going to catch you next time. Boomer.
Sooner.